Dave Youngstrom is here from Yo and Yo, which is also a great corporate citizen that we have in the city of Saginaw. This is their second year performing the annual audit, and it was submitted to the state of Michigan prior to the December 31st deadline. So Dave is here to present that this evening.
Yeah, comfortably ahead of the deadline, I'd like to say. We slept well over the holidays this year, as we, in our first year, it's going to be pretty challenging. There's a lot to get your arms around, and we were right up to the deadline last year. But I want to first thank council for having us be your auditor. Yo and Yo, we are members of the community, and we really appreciate doing the work with you in the city. But I also want to thank your staff, who was Angela and Leah, who did an awesome job working with us this year, making our second year that much better. That's how we want the audit to go. It's usually a challenging first year. The second year we get to know you a little bit better, and it goes a lot smoother, and it did this year. So I guess I want to talk about numbers in a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the things we've done as we've audited the books of the city over the last couple of years. Some of the areas we touch on, it's not just about numbers. You know, we talk about the numbers and where we're at and the budgets and things like that, but we're looking at systems and testing systems and how management reports financial information to you and to the public. So we've looked at areas like adjusting journal entries and reimbursements. We've looked at water sewer adjustments to make sure those are proper. We've looked at DPW employees and how what they're doing at their houses, making sure they're paying what they're paying because they have the ability to do some of those things. Credit cards. We've looked at forfeiture inventory in the police department, making sure that is accounted for. We've been to the compost facility to view that, to see how the cash is collected there, made some recommendations on that. And then we also did some utility bill testing actually this year. It's kind of ironic, to making sure that we are paying for only parcels that we actually own. So we did some testing in that area just to make sure there was nothing out there like that. So overall, it's kind of a broad range of things we're looking at for controls. An internal control system is an ongoing system, and we kind of monitor it as we go. The first thing we did this year, we found an item where we had to do a reclassification. But on the internal control side, we had really no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. In the prior year, we did have a significant deficiency for journal entries, and that was adequately addressed this year. We did not have that again this year. So the system, we noted it, fixed it, and moved on. So those are kind of the higher level controls. Then I look at what's called management comments, which are what I look at as things we noted, ways to make things a little bit better. And a couple of those we came across this year. We're recommending again this year a credit card policy. Again, we continue to have more things we do with credit cards, making sure we have a policy in place for that. And we're also collecting more money electronically and paying more money electronically, and we should probably have a policy to address that as well. And that's something the state is focusing on a little bit too. We do have some outstanding checks that have been over a year, and they're supposed to be remitted to the state. Again, housekeeping things, minor things that we can work on improving. We looked really close at physical inventory this year, and the way we're categorizing some of those versus gallons versus units and drums. So we found a couple little things there. Again, just things to make it a little bit cleaner. We did also note that we had deficits in 3 funds. The local law enforcement actually reduced their deficit by $200,000. The Community Development Fund reduced their deficit by $700,000. And Celebration Park reduced theirs by $144,000. And I'm happy to report we were in compliance with all of our plans with the state of Michigan. So those are all moving in the right direction. Another area we spend a lot of time in the city is our federal awards. We receive over $10.8 million in federal awards, and they come in various programs. So we tested 4 programs to be in compliance this year. The first is Community Development Block Grant. The Neighborhood Stabilization Parts 2 and 3 we tested. Community Policing, and then the Justice Assistance Cluster with a JAG grant, it's called. And we're pleased to report we had no findings in our federal awards this year. And that's fantastic news. So all that money's coming in with the programs we're testing. Those are your largest programs. We're looking at those. A year ago we had a finding, 2 findings, one related to wages and how they were allocated, and that was an NSP program, this Neighborhood Stabilization Program, and that's been addressed this year. We had another one related to employee benefits and how they were charged in Project Home, and that was addressed this year. We didn't find any instances of that. Again, brought them to your attention, they were addressed and taken in. So that's very, very positive for financial reporting and the system that you guys are relying on. All that leads to what you're hiring us for is an opinion. We are issuing what's called an unmodified opinion, It is a clean opinion, the highest level of assurance we can give on a statement. So that's what you're looking for us, the financial statements you're seeing. Again, we made very few adjustments to those. So that's what you're seeing. So let's take a quick look at the numbers. These are general fund revenues and transfers as they come in, and there's a pie chart behind it that shows you the prior year, just so you have it in front of you. I want to talk a little bit about property taxes, a little over $3 million. That is down about 1%. We had some, again, this year, some chargebacks from the county that were pretty substantial, and that kind of hurt us a little bit. On the good side, one of our largest sources, intergovernmental, about $7.4 million, was actually up 1%. State shared revenues actually increased this year by about $100,000, and the EVIP money that they put there for us was up about $240,000 from the year before, which is good coming from the state. They've been cutting and cutting and cutting for all those years. Now we're giving some growth and we're getting some money back, which is really, really nice. Our income taxes were down about 1%, about $300,000. We did receive a transfer in from the health or the self-insurance fund this year to help with our. We'll talk about with our expenditures this year. We kind of returned some of those funds that were over there. Our charges for service were down about 1%, and our licenses about even from the prior year. And then I have the slide just so you can see it comparatively. Just taking a look at our revenues historically over the last 6 years, you can see in 2011 we did receive a lot of grant revenues, and so that kind of peaked out our revenue piece in 2011. And you can see it dip in 2012. Some of those grants did go away. But then again, it dropped again in 2013 by $1.3 million, and this is just revenues. So we built up, and now we're slowly sliding down. With that, it takes me to the expenditure side. In fiscal year 11, we spent $35.7 million, down about $600,000 to $35.1 a year ago, down to $33.1 this year. So we dropped another $2 million in expenditures. Real constant spending expenses are down overall about 6%. Public safety, I mean, they're all pretty comparative to the prior year, but public safety was down about 1%, and everything else was pretty much even. General services was up about 1%, making that offset, but everything else, the consistent spending was almost every department was down just a little bit, in a proportionate share. General government was down $380,000, and general services, even though it was up as a percentage of the total, was still down about $200,000. So again, part of that $2 million reduction. So taking a look at our expenditures, if you go back to that revenue graph, in 2011 our expenditures went up because we're having those grant expenditures we're incurring. You see in 2012 it kind of slid straight across. We continued spending at the same level, but we didn't have the revenue sources. And then again, this year we did do reduction in expenditures by about $2 million. So again, we've got some big drivers out there. We've got retirement rates out there. We've got health care costs coming out. Those are tough to counteract with revenues are declining. And just kind of put them in a line chart for you to see, to track your revenues and expenses. Seeing pretty even from the 8 to 10, dipped the expenditures exceeded revenues in 11 by a little bit. Big gap in 12 where those grants went away and we continued to spend in some of those areas as well as had some additional costs. We did narrow the gap slightly in 13, but we're still spending more than what we're taking in. And I know we have a balanced budget for fiscal year 14, and it's going to be very important that we continue to watch that as we move forward. Because as you see, the next slide is what you have left, which is your rainy day fund / savings account, your unassigned fund balance. Now, it looks like a big peak there in 2011, but that's really 29 days of operations. The city spends about $96,000 a day on its citizens and its community. And so that went down to 10 days in 12 and down to really just about a half a day now. And the revenues this year included that transfer I talked about from the self-insurance fund to offset some of those costs. So we just got to be cautious of that and watch where we're going, because we don't want to slide into that spot where a lot of municipalities already are. A couple of other major funds, just talk briefly about the water fund. The enterprise fund needs to be profitable. They need to have revenues and expenditures because they're investing in systems and infrastructure in order to maintain that and keep up with technology and keep costs down. You can see in 2010 we made a change, and we can see the benefit of that in 11 and 12. Now, the gap in 13 has shrunk a little bit. Revenues are still exceeding expenditures like they should be, but it's really a third of what it was in 2012. So again, and it's still less than the amount in 2011. So again, just something to keep an eye on as we look at the water fund down the road. The sewer fund, in a similar situation in 2010, made some changes there in 9-10. We can see the revenues have been really, really flat there. And expenses have been pretty constant. They're starting to creep up, but the sewer fund is in a healthy position. It's holding its own with the rates that we currently have in place. So we're doing a good job in that area as well. So both the enterprise funds are reasonably healthy. Just something to keep an eye on the water fund as it starts to creep up. And what are we left with? The future. I know we talk about the future. We talked a lot about it tonight, earlier, about what the future is. But had some challenges in Michigan, of course. Things have been better. We're doing better now, a little bit anyway. But personal property taxes is a big issue for us. We collected about $540,000 in personal property taxes in our general fund last year, and legislation that's out there is reducing that. Fund balance, we have $46,000, half a day, no rainy day fund. We've got our health insurance costs to be aware of. We've got increases in the retirement costs. We have less people employed, and we're still paying pensions. So the rates are going higher, because they're all based on covered payroll and how much payroll you have, so the rates are creeping up on us. Our tax base is declining still, and we really don't have any funding for infrastructure or replacement of old buildings or equipment, which again, as we all know, we need to continue to do that to make ourselves more efficient. And then coming down the road, we have unfunded obligations. We fund unfunded OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, basically health care benefits. And then we have unfunded pension liabilities with police and fire, and also with our state system. So there's some pretty big things out there. We paid about $8.3 million in funding our OPEB this year. We paid almost $23 million, or $7.6 million for the MERS pension. And over the last 3 years in police and fire, we paid about $16 million into that system, and the numbers continue to rise. But we are funding the obligation as we're able to. Those OPEB obligations won't hit us tomorrow. They won't be with us right away. It's just something to be aware of. There's a new accounting pronouncement that's out there for pensions that are going to require us to start looking at that a little closer and putting it on your books. Won't be in your general fund, but it'll be in your what's called your government-wide statements. It'll be a footnote, and it'll be a liability on there. And that's, I think we've all heard throughout the state and really the country that that's going to really deficit a lot of districts in not the fund statements, but overall, when you start looking at the picture overall. Bonding companies will tell you that they've been factoring that in, but until they see that big number on that balance sheet, I'll question that. So it's just something to be aware of, and I wanted to share that with you as well as we kind of move forward, because that'll be a big standard coming down the road. And with that, I can take any questions. I want to thank you for the opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
Councilman Balls.
With the plan on Genesee Street closing, how is that going to affect us immediately? I mean, are we going to lose what, $200,000 or $300,000 from them, or what?
I'm not sure I have that answer. Yeah.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have the. I'm really auditing the numbers that would happen in the past, honestly. This is June 30th, 13. I don't know. Do you have?
If you look at the revenue from the plant and the TRW plant, that was majority of the revenue that we collected was income tax from that plant. They, I believe, in their past 5 years, they've only paid any other tax one time, and no corporate. So it's all income tax collected from the employees, and it is. For the last fiscal year, it was about $300,000, I believe, and it's ranged anywhere from probably $250,000 up to $500,000 over the past about 5 years. So we'll have to look at that, and there is, I think, some interest in that plant, but there isn't anything definitive. So we'll have to look at that when we're doing our revenue projections for the budget. One thing that we can look at is, as Dave mentioned, revenue sharing has been slightly increasing over the years. Maybe there can be some lobbying where a part of that excess of revenue that has come to the state could be used for revenue sharing. Dave mentioned this year was a couple $100,000 in EVIP and probably another 150,000 in constitutional revenue sharing. So maybe we'll see those numbers go up a little bit when we get our revenue projections from the state, which would be in February. And we look to that to replace some of that revenue. And also you would, you'll be seeing the Renaissance zones expiring. I think there are 2 more years, and the tax cap is done initially with our assessments, and then the Renaissance zones were taken off. So, and we haven't been collecting $3.8 million since the Renaissance zones were put in place. So each year we'll be recapturing some of that revenue as well. And I think we were down to, when all the Renaissance zones were in place, we were down to about $3.4 million in our actual assessment. So as those expire, we'll be having property tax revenue increase. So that's what we'll be looking at when we prepare the revenue budgets. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Are you still on school?
I'm lucky enough to be on the school board.
So you're aware of the financial strain that's on municipalities and school districts?
No, for sure.
And how would you say we compare with everybody else?
You know, I think you guys are holding your own. You've got a balanced budget. I give you credit for that. That's tough to do with those costs going up. You know, there's a lot, you know, Buena Vista. I mean, you saw what happened there, and it's a blink of an eye. And so you want to do the best you can with what you have. You're in compliance with the plan so far. You know, and we want to keep that general fund out of it any way we can. So I think you guys are doing okay, holding your own, considering all the blocks that are stacked against us sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned a caution sign that kind of went up with our enterprise fund, our water fund.
Yeah.
Maybe are we in? The trajectory of this looks like we're heading towards another one of these, where
Yeah.
Expenses are going to go beyond revenues.
You are sitting reasonably healthy still in the water fund with what you've kind of got about a $10 million unrestricted net position there, but that slowly it was eroded by about $2 million last year, and I want to make sure I make you aware that that's just something we need to keep an eye on. The water fund is still healthy right now, but if it goes another year and it comes to a break-even point, we may need to be taking a look at that. It's just something to be aware of that I noted when I'm just looking at the slides. So both funds are healthy at this point.
With those enterprise funds, what we do when we see that happening, we'll work with Kim Mason to adjust the projects. And you might see that difference in 1 year. The gap may go smaller than what you might like, but that's probably due to the fact that we're doing a major project in that year. We have a major expenditure. So those projects get adjusted throughout the years, and that's something that Kim Mason will look at long-term, where the position is and what projects that we need to have done and what we have planned. And also, soon we'll have our rate analysts up here to talk about the rates going forward, because what happened with the water fund in previous years is the rates did not change for several years, and then you had some major increases. But what we're trying to do now is maintain those increases on a level balance, so that you don't have a major increase in 1 year. But that's probably coming in the next few months for both water and sewer.
Thank you.
Question for the manager. Tim, on these contracts, the water contracts we have with the other communities, and now addressing the water portion of it, and addressing the other taxation portion of it, when that comes to us, is it funded into the water fund, or is it funded into the general fund?
I think you're talking about the 425 agreements.
Yes.
Those go to the general fund.
The general fund?
Yes. Yep. That was something that Andre presented on this fall, I think, because he was one of the architects of putting that all together. But Yep, all of that money goes back to the general fund.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.